Hello, and welcome to a new video from the WOW Canine Integral Center. In the last video, we talked about whether or not to get a puppy. The second question is where to get it, right? Look, many people, both clients and here on the YouTube channel, have asked me if they should get a puppy because they weren't sure whether to adopt one from a shelter or get one from a breeder. We need to take different factors into account. The first is to analyze what the dogs in the shelters are like and why the dogs are in the shelter. We're bombarded with signs saying things like don't buy, adopt, and don't buy, adopt over and over again. There are 18 million signs telling us that, but it's not fair to the poor puppy from the breeder who also has the right to find a family. And then there's the second part. Let's see. The puppies that are in the shelter are there for a reason. Well, for several reasons. The first reason is that they have raised a family that has a dog and has taken another dog and has offspring. They don't know what to do with them because nobody wants those puppies, so they take them to a shelter. And the second reason is that they are dogs with serious behavioral issues that have ended up there. Like what? For example, escape artist dogs. Dogs that escape. Dogs that are just waiting to find a gap. An ajar door to slip out and be gone for another 4 days. That is a huge responsibility because when you have the dog and you put the microchip on it, if that dog has an accident when it escapes, you will be responsible. No matter how much you say, oh, the dog escaped from me, the dog is escaping, but you are responsible. You are the one who has to make sure the dog doesn't escape. So, if the dog has escaped and caused an accident, you are the one responsible. And they will come looking for you, okay? And if, unfortunately, that dog has caused an accident and there has been a death, you are guilty of involuntary manslaughter. So we're not talking about nonsense when we get an escape artist dog. Another type of dog that ends up in shelters are dogs with aggression issues. For example, dogs that haven't been raised properly, okay? That the owners didn't realize that when they got the puppy, they allowed everything. I found it funny that such a little one had that kind of attitude like, oh, look how he bites when he's so small. Then that dog grows and weighs 10 kilos, and now with those bites, the dog has learned that through force, it can get things. So it already has a behavioral problem. It has bitten the child, it has bitten the mother, they can't handle it anymore. They've called a trainer, but the trainer couldn't manage it because there are so many fake trainers out there. Especially with the crisis, they just skyrocketed. Everyone is a trainer, everyone knows about dogs these days. And so, since they couldn't handle them, well, they either take them to the shelter or have them put down. If it has been put down, then there's nothing to be done. But if it ends up in the shelter and you take that dog, then you end up with the puppy and its problems. So, am I saying that you shouldn't adopt a dog from a shelter? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you adopt dogs from a shelter, you need to keep in mind that it's very likely that this dog will come with behavioral issues and you have to be prepared for that. Okay, whether it's because you have experience with other dogs and know more or less how to communicate with them and solve problems, or because you're willing to pay a therapist or a dog psychologist to come and help you with the issues the dog is going to have. Why? Because you're going to go with all your good intentions to adopt a puppy. That little dog is going to go through an adjustment process when they take it out of its environment, and it will have a pretty tough time. One day we will talk about how dogs feel when they are left in hotels and at friends' houses and such. The dog arrives at your house, it has to adapt to your family. It will not be able to adapt. So, on one hand, this is going to cause you more frustration because you won't have been able to take care of the dog. And in the best case scenario, it will go back to the shelter, or in the worst case scenario, it will end up somewhere else. Once a dog leaves a shelter, the shelters are so overwhelmed that it's very difficult for them to take the dog back. So you have to be careful about that. On the other hand, most of the dogs in shelters, the majority are mixed breeds. So you have to be careful about that. On the other hand, most of the dogs in shelters are mixed breeds. So, mixed breed dogs, or even mixed breed dogs, we talked about that in one of the videos. Each breed has its own character, with some instincts more developed than others, or more suppressed, depending on our convenience. Remember, for example, that a herding dog is highly developed for herding, so it has its prey drive suppressed, so it doesn't kill and eat the sheep, for instance. A prey dog is just the opposite. If you have a prey dog, all it wants to do is go and catch something and kill it because it has a super developed instinct. So, with all this, I want to say that when you have a mixed breed dog, and we don't know what breeds it comes from, even if we know what the possible parents could be, we don't know how much of the character it has inherited from one breed or the other. So, for example, if I adopt a dog, let's say I'm a very calm person or I'm an older person, okay? If I need peace and quiet, and I can't go out much, and I adopt a mix of a greyhound and a podenco, then I might have a problem at home because that dog needs a lot of exercise. It's a very energetic dog and requires a huge amount of energy. An example. So for example, when breeders are going to have a litter, they take different aspects into consideration. If you want, one day we can talk to Francisco Bardiza, whom we saw in the agility video. Honestly, I don't know why we liked it so much because it's an amazing video. But it hardly has any views compared to the others. I invite you to go because honestly it's a sport that's quite well known. Agility, but at the same time, there's a lot of misunderstanding about it. Well, Francisco Bardiza, who is from the Japonesa Club and the breeder of the Japonesa, which is the breeder of my dog's breed, Shelties. We can talk to him one day to learn what it's like to be a dog breeder from the inside, right? What one person tells you, what another person tells you. I tell you, and I'm not a breeder, okay? But what I do know, having been in the dog world for so many years, is that breeders, when they're going to mate a dog and a female dog to have a litter, they don't just pick the first dog or the first female they find of the same breed. They obviously don't have the obligation to perpetuate the breeds they specialize in. So you're going to take dogs that are within the standard, that are good looking, that are pretty, etc., etc. It may seem silly, but a lot of people are influenced by whether the dog they get is good looking. Okay, look, I had a case of a dog that they called Dirty, and he was a lovely dog, but the family couldn't even stand to look at him. Okay, because he was an ugly dog, he was a dog picked up from the street. And honestly, I don't know why they took him, because he was a lovely dog. He was an escape artist. Well, I'm getting off track. The thing is, they pay attention to many components, many things, like height, the snout, the build, the coat, making sure it has a good coat, which is also a sign of health. If they have genetic problems, they try to choose dogs that are compatible so that those genetic defects diminish or don't develop. For example, hip dysplasia in German Shepherds. There's a type of blindness that also occurs in collies, which is also associated with genetics. So they look at all of that, they consider the dog's temperament. Dogs must have a good temperament for business success. A Sheltie should be wonderful, affectionate, obedient, and smart. So, if I want to sell my dogs, they have to have a good temperament, because otherwise, my business will last 3 days. What I want is for the person who bought me, for example, in the case of a Sheltie, a breed of dog, that breed of dog to be wonderful, to be super affectionate, super obedient, super smart, so that he recommends me and says, look, I bought my puppy from such a breeder and they recommend me to others, to other potential buyers of my puppy. So there is a bad reputation out there that if they keep them locked up, that if they kick them, that if they keep them locked up and the females are breeding them as if they were a puppy factory, and when they are no longer useful to them, they throw them away. Well, those are not breeders. Those are, I don't know. They make me want to use insults. And since I can't say insults on my channel, I won't say it. But you all know what those kinds of people are. But breeders, for sure, are not like that. If we have so many dog breeds, it makes me itch. But breeders, for sure, are not. If we have so many dog breeds, it makes me itch. We have so many different breeds of dogs thanks to breeders. It's thanks to the breeders. So, throwing so much garbage at breeders, calling them all sorts of names for that, seems very unfair to me. In summary, to not make the video too long, you have to decide whether to adopt a puppy or buy a dog from a breeder. Well, do whatever you want. Let me explain. If you want to help the dogs, in that kennel, find a home. Do it. But keep in mind that you don't know what character you're going to find. You don't know if they're going to have behavioral problems or not. And most likely they will. And if you do, you have to be prepared to help that dog, either because you have knowledge or because you are willing to ask for help and advice. And on the other hand, if you want to buy a dog, buy one. Don't feel bad. Don't let yourself be influenced by this overly sentimental attitude about the poor abandoned dog. Well, poor abandoned dog and poor breeder's dog too, okay? Because the breeder has put in a lot of effort to raise that puppy, which costs a pretty penny, right? It has cost the breeder a lot of money to do that. If maybe a dog costs you, let's say, $500, the breeder has spent about $200 or $300 on things like ultrasounds, cesarean sections if needed, and excellent nutrition to avoid any issues during the birth, etc., etc., etc. I mean, it doesn't say, wow, look at what breeders make, I'd rather adopt. Well, if you prefer to adopt, you should know that there are a number of issues, and if you buy from breeders, you know it's going to cost you some money. That's it. From there, make the decision you need to, but don't let yourself be influenced. I just want to help reduce the number of dogs in the shelter. Well, if what you want is to help reduce the number of dogs in the shelter, then spay or neuter your dog, okay? If everyone spayed their dogs, and not everyone said, I have a super cute female dog, hey, that makes me look better, let's have puppies together, then that problem wouldn't exist. No, the dogs. That problem wouldn't exist, because what happens to those puppies afterwards, if you don't have any connections, if you don't have anything, if they're mutts and no one is going to want them, then they end up in shelters and rescues. So if you're a responsible owner, spay or neuter the dog, and that's it. Or don't spay or neuter it, but don't let it breed. Leave that to the professionals, and it's different if someone gives you a puppy or it becomes a nuisance. But if you spent $1,200 on a dog, you might ensure it's well cared for, because you won't throw $1,200 away. If someone gives you a puppy and it bothers you, the easiest thing to do is to throw it away because it didn't cost you a penny. If you spent $1,200 on a dog, you'll ensure it's well cared for because you won't waste that money. Use judgment when deciding to adopt or buy, and don't be swayed by propaganda saying, don't buy, adopt. That's it. See you next time. So that's why you have to be a little bit judicious. When it comes to knowing whether you're going to adopt or not, whether you're going to buy or not, and not let yourself be influenced by all this propaganda that's going to come in 5 minutes saying don't adopt, sorry, don't buy, adopt. That's it, a hug, and see you in the next video.